We've got a big show, as you mentioned, 5 big stories, the top 5 biggest breaking news stories of this very moment. And we're beginning with one that's really concerning. The Justice Department is demanding hospitals turn over everything about young transgender patients.
Yeah.
Social security numbers, home doctors' texts, Zoom recordings, even billing codes, in subpoenas so invasive that over a dozen hospitals have already shut down their gender care programs entirely. Attorney General Pam Bondi announced 20-plus subpoenas to prosecute doctors for mutilating children, though the care was completely legal in their states, while demanding records dating back to 2020, before the state had banned such treatment. Now, this is the start of what many people fear will be a trans registry, a government official document listing a database of every single person who is trans in America. And this is sort of the leading edge of what could be an even bigger registry for all LGBTQ community people. So it's very worrying for the very obvious reasons that you get to, the echoes of Nazi Germany. You get the echoes of Hitler's, Christian nationalist movement, and you're seeing it right here in the United States of America. This is an incredibly concerning and invasive request for data that is unparalleled in American history. But, Dean, it's very troubling to see something like this happen in the United States of America, where this kind of, we thought this was part of history, this kind of discrimination against people.
Yeah. So if you remember, Bondi announced in April, I believe, April 25th, that she said she's going to go after every doctor who provides trans care to anybody under the age of 18. Any gender-affirming counseling, any conversations about what it's like to transition or the process of transitioning. For anybody who isn't trans, it's not just you go in, get your stuff cut off or stuff put in, and you walk out a new person. It takes years and years and years for a person to transition, specifically minors, which are not allowed to do so. Specifically in Canada, you have to be 18 or older. And even then, that comes with years and years of counseling, getting you to understand the decision you're making, et cetera, et cetera. So let's just put that aside, okay? It's not like Trump during the election was like, you send your kid to school at recess. They come home. They go as a boy. They get a sex change at recess. They come back. That's what the schools want, and he believes that because he's that fucking stupid. But so do all of his followers because they're all afraid of gay people and they're afraid they themselves wouldn't mind being somewhere with a good stiff one in them. That's just the fact. Is that if you're afraid of a gay person, you're afraid of trans people, then you probably are projecting some deep-seated inner love that you're yet to be able to understand. Those are facts. Now, more facts. Let's suss this one out. Who benefits from having a master database of every single American who has walked into a clinic, walked into an office for therapy, counseling, psychotherapy, walked into a gender reassignment facility, or walked into a doctor's office that is capable of doing gender reassignment? Who benefits from that list, from having that list?
I'm not sure I know the answer to that question.
The people in charge.
Yeah.
What have those people in charge said that they're going to do to trans youth, LGBTQ youth, and how do they reference them? Do they reference them as human beings, or do they reference them as mentally delusional people who want to mutilate their children?
I mean, they don't even understand that that is even a possibility. They're not willing to acknowledge that it even exists as a possibility. And, that's why it's so terrifying. This isn't just, there's fewer than 3,000 adolescents in the United States who are receiving hormone treatments right now. It's a very small group of people. But in an attempt to push this Christian nationalist agenda of the Trump regime, they are putting this entire community, which is a really difficult community. I mean, obviously it's not someone easily chooses to live their life like that. It's something that they carefully have to consider. It's very, it's puts a lot of boundaries on your possibilities in your life. So just the people who are going there are vulnerable at the best of times. And now to have them in this registry in order to facilitate what will be a vastly discriminatory policy by the Trump regime in order to help them with their Christian right agenda, they will vilify these young people who are going through a traumatic experience anyhow, who are dealing with difficult
dude, not just vilify them, but then remove any ability they have to go and talk to somebody about what they're doing.
On treatment, yeah.
Yeah.
So, it's just isolating this vulnerable community, making them even more, targets for more discrimination and even more damage.
Fear.
And and you got doctors who are worrying about whether they're going to be arrested. So they don't want to have, they don't want to worry about that. So they no longer are providing prescriptions, or they're no longer providing the therapy. And some of these hospitals are just shutting down all their care around the stuff. So these poor people are being left vulnerable, and they already are the most vulnerable in our society. This is exactly the opposite of what America is meant to be about, where we look after the most vulnerable people in our society, where we hold them up, we support them. And instead of giving them the support and help that they need, this administration is going to vilify them, turn them into criminals in order to make the rest of society, the 300 million other people who are not trans, to make them feel better about themselves, to make them feel more fascist about their God-fearing leader. I don't see how anyone in good conscience can do anything like this.
Well, listen, there is no good conscience in the United States of America right now. The Trump regime does not have a conscience.
Right.
And much like the ICE raids, this is meant to strike fear into the hearts of families with children who are worried about their gender identity. This is meant to strike fear into the hearts of anybody who, the LGBT community, trans community. This is meant to remove any services or supports that they might have in navigating a very confusing time as a man or a woman or a teenager or adolescent comes and says, listen, I don't feel like I'm in the right body.
Mm-hmm.
I don't feel like I'm in the right space. I feel awful about myself, and this is who I want to be. 18, 19 years old. And generally speaking, these, trans people know that they're trans. Gay people know that they're gay from a very young age, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's not something, it's not just like I'm going to flip a switch here and decide I'm going to wear a tutu and get some boobs. It's not how it works.
No.
And this is not how, and so I'm going to walk you through an experience that someone I know had, 62-year-old man who transitioned to being a woman, 62, who said, it was either transitioning, gender reassignment surgery, or killing myself. And I asked him why. I said, can you explain why? And he's like, because I lived a lie full of shame, not being who I thought I was. This person had gender reassignment surgery. Do you know how painful? Do you know how difficult the recovery process is? It's months. This person submitted themselves to that, went through months of painful rehabilitation to come out on the other side, the happiest I have ever seen this individual, the most complete, still here for this person's family, her grandkids, her children, her ex-wife, to be that support in that family. And what Donald Trump is doing is telling everybody that identifies with that story that there's something wrong with you. You're an awful person. You're disgusting. You're an aberration. And not only, if you're a child, not only we're going to stop you from exploring what it is that you're so confused by, we're going to arrest you. We're going to invade your personal privacy and steal your data. And we're going to fucking follow you. And on top of that, anybody who is helping you, we're going to make it criminal to help you.
Yeah.
Do you understand how fucking mean that is? You understand how disgusting that is for 0.000.12% of the population?
Yeah, I mean, this is
do you understand that, folks?
And to families who are dealing with this stuff, you got your kid who's confused, who's going through these issues, and it's so difficult for any family to deal with these issues. And many of them do brilliantly, and they survive this process, and they land up being even stronger for it. But not having the support for it, not having the community for it, is going to drive all of this underground in a way that is going to be, horrific. You're going to have these kinds of things happening in places that aren't sanctioned to have these kind of operations. There's going to be a whole lot of people, broken up families who are going to have to leave the country. Many people have left the country already. I know that Canada's offering some trans people asylum because of this. There's a real, this is cutting at the fabric of our society because we're not recognizing what is a medically recognized, event that happens to a very small minority of people in our society who deserve, like everybody deserves, the treatment they deserve for the thing that they are seeking to get help with. And so to have this just the beginning stages of what appears to be an anti-LGBTQ registry, a policy which basically is going to keep a list of all the LGBTQ people.
Exactly what it is. That's exactly what it is.
And what are they going to do with that list? We see what they're doing with the homeless people now in D.C. They're obviously coming to other blue cities in America. They've already indicated they'll be going to L.A., New York, Portland, Washington State. All these different these cities are going to be having the same homeless cleaning up process going on.
Well, who are they going after? Yeah. Like think about DC's raids, think about LA, think about all that. Who are they going after? They're going after gay people. They're going after the trans community. They're going after migrants. They're going after poor Black neighborhoods. They're going after poor Hispanic neighborhoods. They're going after undesirables that if you take the Old Testament to be true, the Bible to be true, they're going after all the people the Bible says are ingrates, disgusting, sinful aberrations that do not represent Christian nationalism. That's what this is. Let me take you through some numbers real quick. These are the best current stats we have from the Williams Institute from 2025 that combines data on the demographics behind Americans, the number of Americans, percentage of Americans who identify as trans, just trans, okay? 3.3% of the total number of people that identify as trans are between the ages of 13 to 17. So about 724,000 people, they identify as trans. 827,000 between the ages of 18 to 24. 25 to 34, that number is 623. 35 to 64, 532,000. 65 plus, 155,000. Total amount of trans people in the United States of America, not people undergoing gender reassignment surgery. That number is about, currently, I think that numbers are under the age of 19, that number's around 3,000. Across the United States, that number's closer to 15 to 20,000 that are waiting for or are engaged in the process of gender reassignment surgery. 20,000. 377 fucking million people in that country. 2.86 million people out of 377 million identify as trans. That is less. That is 0.8%, not even, it's 0.7% of the fucking population.
And that's just identifying. That doesn't mean they've had any surgery or anything like that. They're just saying they're trans.
And they want to build a database to capture every single name, phone number, their doctor, private medical history, private psychological history, to have a master list of trans and gay people in the United States that they can target like they are targeting migrants and other people who do not look like Donald Trump's cabinet. Suck on that today.
Yeah, I mean, it's horrific. And this is where we're heading. I mean, it's just, they're building camps. They're building all these camps for these homeless people, these, facilities that allow people to live under tents, but don't give to very much others. And they're out of the city centers. That's where they're going to be driving all these people in the future. It just seems to me inevitable that's where we're going to land up. Story number 4 on the countdown today. The NSA's acting director tried desperately to save the agency's chief data scientist from Trump's political purge, but failed when intelligence director Tulsi Gabbard revoked his security clearance along with 36 others. So this is a guy named Vinh Nguyen. He's the son of a South Vietnamese general who fought alongside Americans and was recruited at 17 for his math genius and spent decades developing AI systems to protect America. Now he's been fired for his maybe tangential, can't be proven connection to the 2016 Russia investigation that Trump once erased as a story and erased from history. This is someone that America desperately needs right now in its war against Russia and its war against disinformation and its war against protecting America from all sorts of incursions around the world. And of course, Donald Trump can't wait to fire him.
Yeah. Did you see Tulsi Gabbard's made-for-TV rant today where she goes on the internet and she starts laying out the fact that Russia had absolutely nothing to do with any election interference? Did you see her
I didn't see that.
absolve? Yeah. Tulsi absolves Donald Trump today, saying Russia didn't have a preferred candidate in the election. Vladimir Putin himself, after the 2016 elections, like, yeah, we wanted Donald Trump to win. We were rooting for him. We were helping him. Lavrov, Medvedev, Peskov, every single one of Putin's guys has admitted publicly on national television over and over again that indeed they did do their best to interfere. And so much to the point that I believe it was Lavrov or maybe it was Medvedev who said, hey, Donald Trump knew the deal. We helped him win. Now he owes us. Do you remember that?
Yeah,
that was like
Medvedev
3
said that,
fucking
24,
months ago.
Yeah, absolutely.
So let's not pretend that Tulsi Gabbard and the Trump regime aren't doing their very fucking level best to annihilate the rich history of Donald Trump's Manchurian candidacy, because that's all they're trying to do. They're trying to whitewash and sanewash not just his involvement with Russia, which has lasted for 40 fucking years. If you go read The Greatest Heist, #7, Lev's narrative.org piece, it's an incredible series. You lay it out with receipts that Donald Trump not only was deeply embedded with the KGB, he has been a useful fucking tool for them for I don't know how long. Do you remember when he won in 2016? He kicked the media out, accepted Russian media, kicked his own people out, with the exception of a translator, brought in the Russian ambassador to the United States and Lavrov to the Oval Office, and they all sat around and started fucking dying laughing.
And fired Comey for that, he got that Russia thing off my back. Remember, that's the exact quote he had.
The effort to try to outrun the factual allegations that Donald Trump is a Russian asset, that Donald Trump committed an insurrection against the United States of America, that Donald Trump is in the Epstein files and is protecting hundreds of his pedophile pals around the world. It is all happening right now concurrently at the exact same time.
I mean, I can actually see their attempts to try and cover up 2016, and maybe they think they can get away with it. But how do you cover up 40 years? How do you cover up that whole period of time when he was used as an instrument for money laundering? I mean, that's what Trump is. He's a money launderer for Russian interests. It's what he's been all his life. The reason why he's gone bankrupt and been able to survive all these bankruptcies is because Russia was feeding him money. He is a failed businessman. He's a failed real estate broker. He's a failed everything. He's just a failure who's been propped up as a Russian asset for 40 years. And we have bought this, and now and now they're trying to convince us that that's all a lie too. Maybe he had nothing to do with Russia. I mean, what are they trying to have us believe, that we can't believe our own eyes for the last 40 years?
Correct, dude. Don't you remember him saying that? Don't believe what you read and what you see. Believe me.
Yeah, he did.
Do you remember that? It was like 4 or 5 years ago.
Yeah, he said it.
Like, don't believe anything you see or read. It's not real. Believe me. Donald Trump is a compulsive liar. Donald Trump is a Manchurian candidate. Donald Trump, no matter what Tulsi Gabbard cooks up and puts out in some fucking bizarre internet rant about how Donald Trump had nothing to do with anything bad and he's all good and Russia's great. I mean, Bill Barr followed it up the day before. I don't know if you remember that. Bill Barr in secret testimony, he's like, I didn't see Donald Trump do anything in the Epstein files.
Yeah.
I was like the nuclear cover up of Donald Trump's reality is happening right now. Tulsi Gabbard needs to go to The Hague, along with every other member of that cabinet, just for the gaslighting alone. She is willingly helping a country that she absolutely got paid to help in the past. And she's willingly helping Donald Trump. And this is a woman who is deeply involved in some Hawaiian cult, by the way. Yeah. So don't listen, America's fucked. And that was just another example of how fucked it is.
Are they doing this to convince Donald Trump that he isn't a Russian asset? Or are they doing this to convince the rest of us that Donald Trump isn't a Russian asset? Because
all of us.
Yeah, I sometimes I think it's to convince him, because they need him in line. And the more he realizes that he might be a Russian asset, the more he realizes that he actually is under Russian control and that he was elected by Russia, maybe it might change it. Maybe it might, somewhere along the line, although I don't doubt it, but it might shift his political leanings, because he is very malleable, as we've seen in the last few weeks, to moving wherever the political winds blow. But I find it astonishing that they are trying to do this effort. And, as you point out in Chapter 7, everyone I spoke to so far in the greatest heist are people I've spoken to directly. These are not people, I'm not picking up secondhand quotes from people. These are, Yuri Shvets is the guy who was the KGB head, and he describes, in the Washington Residentura, as they call it, and he describes how they got Donald Trump to be an asset. Those are his words. I've spoken to Ari Ben-Menashe, who's an Israeli intelligence person, who, in his words, describes how, Robert Maxwell, who is the key guy to set up Epstein and Trump, was this. You took out money from the Soviet Union. He was the key funnel for money from the Soviet Union, $50 billion that was taken out of the Soviet Union and put into the West for precisely this kind of economic warfare that they've been doing against America ever since. And so, who do we have as in a great picture on Maxwell's yacht is Donald Trump with Maxwell and the former Senator Tower, who covered up Iran-Contra, in what was just a coup, a photograph that was sent around the world as a sign that they had got their guy. After 12 years of cultivating Donald Trump, they made him their guy, and they showed it off to the world. And this included trips to, I can read it in Chapter 7, but, it's to me, this is now a narrative that is so crystal clear, because I've spoken to the people personally. The evidence is there. You can see it all yourself. You can research all yourself. This is what happened. And the thing that we all have to realize that it might be good to get ourselves comfortably numb by listening to these lies of Tulsi Gabbard or whomever. Maybe that numbs you and lets you get on with your day. But the reality, the inconvenient truth of the moment is that America is ruled by a Manchurian candidate. America is currently in control of Vladimir Putin. And that is a 5-alarm fire which cannot go, unresponded to. It is tearing down America. It's destroying America, the entire fabric of our society.
Yeah, and the same, police state bullshit, the same anti-trans stuff, same anti-gay stuff. Where do you think that comes from? Russia did it years ago. Russia made it illegal to beat your wife. I'm sure that's next.
Yeah.
Russia says there's no gay people in the United States. They actively target them. They're all in hiding, or they're all trying to leave the country, have been for decades. Russia is a police state. You can't hold up a sign in Russia. You can't even partake in a fucking protest in Russia without those guys in fucking bicycle helmets coming around and beating the shit out of you and throwing you on a bus and then sending you to a fucking work camp for 2 weeks, promising that you won't do it again. That is exactly what's happening. We're seeing a carbon copy of it. Like, the playbook is exactly the same. And to your point, if you go read the Greatest Heist series, episodes 1 through 7, I read last night. It was incredible. The picture of Robert Maxwell laughing, Donald Trump standing there with his thumb in the air, and the senator
Ghislaine in the background.
Ghislaine's in the background. Yeah, and he's like, I don't know who he is. And that's on Robert's yacht.
Yeah.
That's on Maxwell's yacht in 1982 or something like that. Like,
89. That was 89.
So it's 12 years after, because they made contact with him in 77, and your piece is incredible. It lays out how after 12 years, they're like, he's good. Let's activate him. We got him feeding at the trough.
Yeah. And, they did the whole thing. They sent him to, and then they give him Khashoggi's yacht, which he gets for free. Who gets a yacht for free? Like, no financing, no money down. Hey, Donald Trump, here's a super spy yacht. It's just yours. Do with it what you want. It's kind of ludicrous to imagine that anyone would believe that would happen. Now, Donald Trump obviously believed it. He obviously took the yacht and made it the Trump princess, But this was Khashoggi's, super spy yacht that he negotiated arms deals from around the world for decades. This is just, it's so obvious what is going on and what has happened over the last 40 years, that's for people to still trying to be pulling the wool over our eyes, and worse, prosecuting officials, prosecuting this guy who's got his security clearance revoked. He's important. He really is defending America.
As are the 34 other people that they fired today for no good reason. Just because they're not Trumpers, just because they haven't signed a loyalty quote, just because they have access to information that Donald Trump doesn't want anybody else to have.
Because they're a threat to Russia. These
Sure.
guys are defending us against Russia. That's why they got fired. They
Yep.
got fired because they're the ones who know what's going on. They're the ones who have he's the crypto he's a crypt break. What do you call those cryptographers? He's able to crack codes. That's what this guy does. And we're letting him go. We're revoking his security clearance because he can figure out what Russia is saying and he can counter what Russia is doing with AI. This is us aiding and abetting the enemy by firing these people, by revoking these security clearances.
It's been 7 months of that.
Yeah,
7 months of that.
yeah,
Whether it's
yes.
like the international, like the foreign interference and international money laundering squad that he dusted, the global sex trafficking thing that he dusted. I mean, he's got there's an entire division, an espionage division of the government that was solely focused on Russia. Got rid of everybody.
It's appalling.
Everybody.
It's appalling. People really have to start understanding the significance of all these events because it's going to be very hard to reverse them. At number 3 in the countdown, Alberta separatists, this is Alberta in Canada, are bragging about a supposed $500 million transition loan from Trump officials to help Alberta become independent. This is from deanblundell.substack.com. We're covering this story brilliantly. Dean, what's going on? This is unheard of.
Yeah. Well, listen, when Alberta is the most sympathetic province to anything MAGA, and we've been over this a couple of times. Alberta is an incredibly uneducated province, hyper-religious province, a lot of religious communes in and around the province of Alberta, southern Alberta, Three Hills, Alberta, Lethbridge, Cardston, different small communities that are hosts to a variety of extremist religious compounds, whether they be Hutterite, whether they be Seventh-day Adventists, whatever. I mean, they just are. And their support for the political machinery means everything to the current party that's in power. Now, the party that's in power is run by a woman named Danielle Smith, who is a MAGA nut. Like, she loves MAGA. She went running down to Mar-a-Lago for a picture with Trump when he was threatening to annex Canada prior to coming into office. And then she went running down there again to take part in the Ben Shapiro Daily Wire fucking podcast series with Glenn Beck. She publicly, Danielle Smith, the premier of the province of Alberta, publicly begged Donald Trump to interfere in Canada's election process by dropping tariffs just long enough so the guy who lost, Pierre Poilievre, in spectacular fashion, a federal Maple MAGA candidate, could have a chance at winning the election because he was getting his ass kicked by Mark Carney. So just a little subcontext for you to understand what Alberta's all about. She's in charge. She's holding a referendum, a separation referendum, because a very small portion, around 11% of that province, are hardcore separatists who've been fed lies over decades that Ottawa hates the capital of Canada and Eastern Canada hate Alberta, steal money from Alberta, and the reason why their lives suck is because of Ottawa. So the majority of people that showed up for the convoy, the fake trucker convoy we had a few years ago, were from Western Canada, largely from Alberta, led by a couple of Albertans, Chris Barber, who's the dumbest fuck I've ever met in my life, and then Tamara Lish, who was the money bag. She was the person that raised like $20 million in crypto and small donations, and they both just got charged and convicted for fraud and a variety of other things for what they did when they tried to attempt an insurrection here in Canada, which was largely promoted, supported, and funded by MAGA and Russian interests. So, putting that aside, there's a gentleman named Dr. Dennis Modry. Dennis Modry is a hardcore separatist who had his doctor's license taken away to practice medicine because he went and got surgery on his legs to be taller so he could marry a Filipino woman who wanted him to be taller. I know, this sounds wild. He loses his license.
I didn't know you could get surgery like that.
Yeah. You can get leg lengthening surgery now. He goes to China to do it. They fucked it up. And so his nervous system was all messed up and he couldn't practice law. They took his license away. So what does he do? He gets mad. He teams up with this guy named Jeffrey Rath, lawyer who's been defrocked. He's suffered major fines from things like fraud to threatening to murder clients. Big, fat, maggot, dumb lawyer. He's partnered with a whole bunch of different groups. And one of these groups is the Alberta Prosperity Project, which was started by a guy named David Parker, who I know well, and a couple of other people, hardcore separatists. And Dr. Dennis Modry let it slip in a meeting There's audio of it. I've posted it. You can go and read it, deanblundell.substack.com. And I'll read it to you. That he was offered a $500 million transition loan, secession transition loan, if he promised to break up Canada by giving Alberta and engineering a separatist movement in Alberta to remove Alberta from Canadian Confederation and hand Alberta over to America to be the 51st state. Let me read you what he said. This is great. It's awesome. I met a senior U.S. administrative official just a couple of steps away from the president himself. When we walked into the conference room, the first comment was, quote, "We recognize and support Alberta becoming the sovereign nation for the first time. We talked about a $500 million transition loan that we would only draw down on as necessary as we work with the U.S. to transition from a province to a country or a state. And the U.S. agreed to take every Alberta citizen's Canadian dollar and exchange it for a U.S. dollar." That's sedition. That's treason.
100%.
That, if true, that's the Trump regime off the books promising to give separatists in Alberta a $500 million fucking loan in return for breaking up Canada and delivering the province of Alberta, the energy-rich province of Alberta, to the Trump regime. Why, if true, my opinion is that Donald Trump got told to soundly go fuck himself when we elected Mark Carney.
Yeah.
He can make no time here in Canada. He has reached a bulkhead, and MAGA's next step is, how do we pick off a MAGA-friendly province, and how do we break up Canada from the inside?
Yeah, the hostility of this thing. It's so hostile. And it's the Trump regime. Let's not kid about it. This is exactly them. This is the Trump regime offering bribes to Canadian office holders to break the Constitution, to be treasonous, to basically, break apart this country. And Canada, an ally of the United States. Canada is, up until the Trump administration, the most supportive country America has ever wanted to have as a neighbor. And, I still remember that, they made a musical out of it, the come and away thing. But, when America was attacked in 9/11, where did all those planes go? Where did all those people go? And who looked after the American interests during that time? It was Canada that did that. And now this regime run out of Kremlin, run out of Moscow, is trying to break up Canada, is trying to steal a province out of Canada because politically they don't like what the Canadian people have elected.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it's ridiculous. It's an affront to every traditional set of rules we've had in the last 80 years. This is not what the world does. This is not how the world operates.
No, it's how Trump operates. It's how MAGA operates. It's how Putin operates, to your point. This was heavily influenced by Russia. Russia has serious mineral and oil interests in energy-rich and mineral-rich Alberta and Western Canada. This also comes on the heels of, if you remember yesterday, State Senator, Junior State Senator Joseph E. Martin from Maine sending that letter to Western Canadian politicians, telling them the same thing. This is, a week after Pete Hoekstra, MAGA extremist ambassador to Canada, dressed down Canada, blamed us for the trade war, called us mean, called us nasty, said he was thinking of smuggling American booze into Canada and selling it because everybody wants American booze and Canadians have to stop buying it. It's legal to buy it in certain places. It's legal to buy it anywhere if they have it, but Canadians just aren't buying it. And he blamed the government, not Canadians.
Some are, and that's what worries me. He said this is a clear, as we said yesterday, this is an organized campaign. This is an attempt to destabilize and break up Canada. This is not some crazy people just here and there doing their thing. This is an organized attempt to destroy the Canadian country. And what they are doing is just what they did in Ukraine for the years before. They attacked Ukraine, and we're seeing it now play out. And this might seem like it's insignificant stuff. It might seem like these are just small incidents and who cares and who'll take that money anyhow. But the truth of it is these things grow over time. They metastasize. You got people in the population that start believing these things. And, Canadians and Americans need to wake up right now to this notion that the country is under a disinformation attack on these fronts. And it's not some homegrown, just a few grassroots activists trying to throw together a secession campaign. This is a disinformation campaign which could lead to war down the line. And that's why it's not something to just dismiss as a joke, even though these guys seem like they're jokes. It's absolutely a real thing that is happening to Canada right now, and it's a significant attack.
Yeah, it is. And I'm going to curate a piece for everybody so you can kind of see it, where it comes from, who's in charge of it, how it gets funded. But Alberta is a going concern for MAGA. Alberta is a going concern for the Trump regime because they know if they can get a toehold, which they already have in certain hotspots in Western Canada, because believe it or not, there are religious hardliners. And I got a note from somebody this morning because I did a podcast with Nick Perro and Fred from Sick of the Shit podcast. And a long story short, we went off on evangelical extremists, Muslim extremists, catering to them, which is exactly what is happening here in Canada, exactly what's going on in the United States. And there are extremists. And listen, my family, Christian family, lovely, God-fearing people. They believe something I don't, but they hate Donald Trump and what he's done to their faith, what he's done to their ideology. Because nothing about Trump is Christ-like. My brother's a pastor; he'll tell you that. He's vaccinated. He believes in science, but he also believes that Jesus was a good dude. And nothing that we see in the Trump regime represents any of that. However, in Alberta, there's a very sympathetic ear to Trump, his police state, his anti-trans shit, his hatred of the LGBT community, his hatred of Black history. He's going after the Smithsonian. We'll get to that. His desire to revisit the white man's past sins and whitewash them and colonialism, and there's a very hot audience for that.
Yeah, for sure.
In Alberta and Saskatchewan. And so they realize that, and they're going all in terms of funding things like the America Fund out of Edmonton, Alberta, or the Alberta Prosperity Project, or my personal favorite, the Alberta Republican Party.
Yeah, but this is how the Tea Party. This reminds you of the Tea Party. This is how the Tea Party started, with Russian support. This is how that whole movement began. This is how MAGA began. With all these sort of wedge issues that seem so far off the regular grid that you just ignore them. But they start working on those issues, and they started turning up the volume on those supposedly marginal issues. But then these issues grow, and they do a very good job at disinformation and propaganda and at building these movements on the fringes.
But you know how they did it in Alberta too, which is really fascinating, because Alberta's got a heavy Indigenous population. Mm-hmm. They started feeding this lie that the government of Canada was going to take away the land that belonged to white people, give it all back to the Indigenous people. So if you had a farm, and then they were going to take your guns away so you couldn't defend your shit. It's exactly the same fucking playbook in the United States.
Yep.
Exactly the same. Yep. Feed a lie, tell them the theater's on fire, scream fire, and run out as fast as you can. Like, that's how they did it to these people. And again, not to take anything away from people who have a religious ideology that they follow, but if you want an army of dumb people, if you want to activate an army of dumb people, you go right to the religious zealots, like right to the crazy people. And you say, hey, listen, they're going to take your shit. You need to stand up for what's right in your religion. You got to stand up for our ideology. God demands it of you. And they're like, yeah, where's my gun?
You create fear. You create fear amongst those communities that they're under threat, and they will, they'll start the fight. The number 2 story on the countdown today, Defense Secretary. By the way, you're doing such good work with this story, Dean, on this secession story and on this disinformation campaign. So everyone really needs to check out your Substack, because it's, I think you're one of the few voices that is really covering this in the way it should be covered. So thank you very much for doing that.
Thank you.
The number 2 story was Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth's personal security requirements have ballooned to over 500 Army criminal investigators protecting multiple family residences in Minnesota, Tennessee, and D.C., pulling agents from fraud and violent crime investigations, including the recent Fort Stewart mass shooting. The unprecedented arrangement includes protecting his ex-spouse's home, accompanying children to school, and even scrambling to cover a Nationals game where Hegseth bought regular seats instead of a suite, forcing agents to secure an entire exposed section of the ballpark. The Secretary of Defense needs some security, apparently.
He's quite a tough guy, isn't he? I love the tough guy routine that he puts on. I don't know if you saw the video of him and RFK doing fake push-ups and fake pull-ups.
Yeah, I did see that. It's a laudable effort, I guess.
Nothing says I'm not afraid like a guy that has a security detail of 500 dudes.
500. 500 criminal investigators following the dude around.
So much for alpha male Pete Hegseth. Yeah. He's scared to fucking death, this guy. They're all pussies. They all put on this brave front, like, I'm an alpha, you can't hurt me, look at me do push-ups, we're coming for you, we'll find you. And then in a quiet moment, they're surrounded by 500 fucking burly FBI, DOJ, Secret Service guys because they're so afraid. Why are they afraid? Why is he afraid? Let me explain why Pete Hegseth is deathly afraid.
Yeah.
Because Pete Hegseth knows he's a total piece of shit. Yeah. And he knows everybody hates him. And he knows why. And so what he's done is he gets in front of the camera, does a couple push-ups. Look at me doing these fake pull-ups. And by the way, these were the pull-ups. There was like a 2-inch gap. He's like, I can't do one, so it's not like I should be throwing stones. However, Pete Hegseth is a pussy, and it's been borne out by the fact that the guy has 500 people around him at all times, creating a wall between him and anybody who might get me.
I mean, seriously. The president doesn't have as much security detail. I mean, that's what we're talking about. This guy has, and taking his kids to school, covering the baseball game. I mean, it's just like, don't go to the baseball game.
To be fair, if I was Pete Hegseth and I could take out an entire section at a baseball game, I would. And also, to be fair, if I could have access to security detail and not drive my kids to school for a solid 4 years, I might do that too.
So you could sleep in after the night of drinking that you had the night before. Hopefully you'll never be the Secretary of Defense of the United States of America.
No, I think there's no chance of that.
Yeah, thank God. Yeah. Thank God for something. You're a great broadcaster, but Secretary of Defense, I don't know. The number one story. Trump accused the Smithsonian of being out of control for focusing on how bad slavery was. And ordered museums
I shouldn't laugh at that, but oh my God, when you say it, it sounds way worse than it looked in his Truth Social post.
It's ridiculous. So it ordered museums to revise exhibits within 120 days to show more brightness and success instead of acknowledging America's racial history. The administration is reviewing all museum content for problematic tone and historical framing, part of Trump's broader campaign to sanitize American history. I mean, the guy's trying to say that slavery was a good thing. I don't know. I don't know what they're trying to get away with here.
Can I read his Truth Social post and then we'll kind of get into it and then we'll wrap it up?
Yeah.
And thank you, everybody, for joining us as well. Can't thank you enough for the time that we get to spend with you, and seeing the activity here in the chat makes me very happy. We've got several hundred people watching. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Let me get to Donald Trump's tweet. This is about the Smithsonian. Do you know what the Smithsonian is? It's not one museum, and it's not a partisan project. It's the world's largest museum, education, and research complex.
Yeah.
21 different museums, the National Zoo. It was created by Congress in 1846. It receives federal support, governed independently with a public mission to collect, conserve, and explain the American story in all its complexities. Slavery is one of those complexities.
Mm-hmm.
And in the Smithsonian, there's a large exhibit that features the Point of Pines cabin. And the Point of Pine cabin was brought from Edisto Island, South Carolina, and it was a cottage. It was a small shack where they used to hide slaves and get them under the Underground Railroad. Okay, so Trump wants to get rid of that, and let me explain to you why. This is his reasoning. Okay, this is unhinged. This is his Truth Social post yesterday. The museums throughout Washington, but all over the country, are essentially the last remaining segment of woke. Woke. Okay? The Smithsonian is out of control, where everything discussed is about how horrible our country is, how bad slavery was, and how unaccomplished and downtrodden have been. How the unaccomplished and downtrodden have been. Nothing about success, nothing about brightness. This is my favorite part. Nothing about the future. Now, I don't know who wants to tell him.
Has he been to the Smithsonian?
But museums, The very fucking word out of Latin means past.
Yeah.
Like museums don't have that's called an exposition, by the way. It's an expo where you have a future expo. Museums document history.
But
That's
they have a
why
huge
they
section on all the
fucking
stuff. They have
exist.
a huge aeronautics and space section. I mean, it's
Yeah, that's pretty
Has he
bright.
been? Has he been to the Smithsonian?
I don't
Has
think
he
so.
actually
Does he look like a guy that would appreciate a good tour through the
No.
fucking Smithsonian?
No, maybe just to the Burger King.
Yeah, you go tour to fucking McDonald's and
Yeah.
maybe the tour of Jeffrey Epstein's basement. So let me finish. He goes, nothing about the success, nothing about brightness, nothing about the future, which is fucking whatever. We are not going to allow this to happen. I've instructed my attorneys to go through the museums and start the exact same process that was done with colleges and universities where tremendous progress has been made. This country cannot be woke because woke is broke. We have the hottest
extortion.
country in the world, and we want people to talk about it, including our museums. That's not just missing the point. That's pure insanity.
Yeah.
That is a man who's saying slavery wasn't that bad. We need to stop talking about America's rich slavery history. We need to stop talking about how we used to horse trade human beings for hundreds of years. We need to stop talking about how black people didn't have the fucking right to vote up until the last 60 years. And we need to stop holding ourselves to account for the crimes that my forefathers committed because it's embarrassing.
Yeah.
Because I don't want people to know that white people did this. He's literally calling America's history, black history, too woke to pay homage to.
Yeah.
Suck again. I said this earlier. Suck on that today.
You know, it's appalling to think that. I mean, I've always thought of the Underground Railroad as a real sign of America's greatness. You know, as a way of that people were saved out of slavery, as a way that, you know, approved the Enlightenment and the Constitution of America as being what it is meant to be. And yet here is this cretin from Russia, you know, basically coming to this office and saying that he wants to take that out of our history, to remove this point of principle that Americans stood up for equality, that Americans stood up for liberty, and you know, equal treatment in front of the law, that Americans stood up for that is not a point of brightness, that should be removed from the museum is atrocious.
Does that not dictate your future? It should, right? Let me walk you through history again. History is a great teacher. Okay, and then we'll wrap this up.
Yeah.
In 1938, little mustachioed man in Germany rose to power named Adolf Hitler. One of the first things he did after he killed everybody that helped him get into power was revise Germany's history by going into museums, pulling out exhibits, pulling out artwork, pulling out statues that were created to represent Germany's history. He wanted it represented as a more civilized, not barbaric country. He didn't want any stories of losses in wars, so he revised all the textbooks, and he went after the universities, and he went after, you know, professors, and he went after doctors, and he went after everybody who told an accurate story or liked accurate numbers or wanted to report accuracy in any capacity about Germany's history and the German people. 28 years ago, a guy named Vladimir Putin did the exact same fucking thing. We're here because he is no different than any of those people. Collecting a database, private security and private information, private data to create a database of trans people. We started the podcast off in the LGBT community with that. Talked a little bit about DC, talked about the police state. Now we're talking about him telling black people, wasn't that bad. We don't need to talk about your story. We don't need to account for your grandparents being owned by plantation owners, whipped, beaten, impregnated, raped, murdered. We don't need to talk about Emmett Till. We don't need to talk about George Floyd. We do not need to talk about the accuracy of slavery and violence against black people in the United States, which has happened and continues to happen, by the way. It has happened in my fucking lifetime. As a 52-year-old man, I remember segregation.
I do too.
I remember all of it. You do too. You're from apartheid South Africa. Like, we remember those things. We're here to attest to them. And what he's saying is that my memory doesn't count anymore. The black community, rich black history, what they've overcome doesn't matter anymore. And he's calling it woke.
Yeah.
And what woke means by dictionary definition is to be actively aware of racial and societal injustices. What we did to black people, and I say we meaning white men, white women, colonialists, what America and Canada and several countries, England, what they did to black people, horse trading them, putting them on boats like Amistad, chaining them underneath, living in their own filth, and then selling the strongest ones and killing the ones you didn't want, and then taking women and raping them. Like Thomas Jefferson had like eight children with his slaves. Like, I mean, you know, this is a part of America's history that they emerged from to be a better country, to your point. That's the brightness. That's the future. Donald Trump doesn't want any of that because Donald Trump is a fucking racist who identifies with Christian nationalism, white supremacy. His dad was a member of the fucking KKK. So, of course, this means something to him. And of course, he's going to use every trigger at his disposal, including, and by the way, he's already had another exhibit removed from the Smithsonian. Did you know that?
Yeah, the insurrection one.
Yeah, the ones that reference his insurrection and both of his impeachments. Removed. That's a rich part of America's history that America needed to learn from.
Important part.
Yeah. So, heads up,
what worries me
everybody.
about what you're saying is that what, you know, your reference to Hitler, of course, is what Hitler did then afterwards is start a major global war, you know, sending millions of people to their deaths in concentration camps, trans people, gay people, Jewish people, any people who didn't fit into their mold.
Handicapped people.
Yep. Yeah. And so, and that's where we're heading, you know, maybe that's where we're heading. It's not a very bright place to end the show, but it certainly is.
No, it's not, but it's where we are.
Yeah.
Right? It's not just where you're heading. It's America.
Yeah.
It's happening now. We're talking about it now. He's doing this now. He's taking away your right to vote. He's taking away mail-in. He's going to try take away mail-in batting. He's going to take away black history. He's going to take away accountability. He's going to remove real history from museums that he doesn't like because it makes white people look bad.
Yeah. And those immigrants are still being taken off our streets, you know, every day, moving thousands and thousands of people, maybe citizens as well, off our streets. We don't even know where they're going anymore. We don't really pay that much attention anymore.
Did you see J.D. Vance and Stephen Miller at Union Station in Washington today?
No, I didn't see them.
Yeah. They brought like donuts in for the ICE guys that were like harassing people trying to get to fucking work. And it was at Union Station train station. And they couldn't get a word in. Stephen Miller was like, the only people that are protesting are elderly hippies, dumb elderly hippies. And then J.D. Vance is like, hey, we're cleaning up the streets. The guy's like, can you give us some stats or show us some crime statistics that are in your favor that would justify what you're doing? Look around, he says. And the entire time that was happening, Americans were screaming at him, go fuck a couch, you Nazi, you couch humping Nazi. And he and Stephen Miller walked out with this sheepish look on their face. And that gave me hope. Because that's how I like to fight, number one. And it was amazing to see so many Americans walking through Union Station, flipping the vice president and his right-hand man, Nosferatu, the middle finger, calling them Nazis and couch humpers on the way out. So that, if you can harness that BDE, that big dick energy, I would certainly appreciate it, as would the free world.
We really need it. We really need it. I mean, I rarely say that we need more protests and more stuff like that, but we really do need to start seeing a far more vocal rejection of what is going on, because what's
Yeah, like
going
the guy
on
that
is
threw the
untenable.
Subway sandwich at the ice guy last week.
Yeah.
Remember that? That was
Yeah.
the best sandwich I've ever seen in my life. I'm like, start
In
throwing
charge of
some
the felony.
sandwich. It was a great sandwich.
That is the FiveStack for today. Everyone needs to check out deanblundell.substack.com, where he has 50% off his annual subscription fees, because he is worth every cent, where you get all the coverage, especially of what's going on right now, in terms of America's and MAGA's attack, disinformation attack on Canada. He's got amazing coverage of that, but all the news of the day, every day on the deanblundell.substack.com. And at narrative.org, narrativ.org, you will get to see the latest chapter in The Greatest Heist. Thank you for everyone who's been saying nice things about that. It's an interesting story.
It's awesome. It's awesome, dude. And listen, everybody, if you love backstory, you love context, you want to know how we got here, The Greatest Heist series, every single part, get a subscription, read it, share it. Phenomenal, especially part 7. It was so good, and you brought receipts, pictures, and everything.
Yeah, and the story gets even more interesting as we move along down the line here. So, and if anyone has any questions or about the chapter, please feel free to just DM me, and I'll happily answer them. And that is the FiveStack. We shall be back tomorrow at 3 p.m. on the Thursday edition. Have a great day, everybody, and
Bye,
have
all.
a great day, Dean.
You too, buddy. Bye.
Bye.